My parents disowned me for refusing to take care of my sister's kids, so I changed my number and watched them cry when the money stopped. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I've always been treated as the backup plan in my family. From as far back as I can remember, my sister was the golden child. If she wanted something, she got it. If she made a mistake, my parents brushed it off with a laugh. Meanwhile, if I so much as forgot to take the trash out, I'd get a lecture about being irresponsible or ungrateful. Growing up, I learned quickly that I couldn't count on anyone but myself. While my sister stayed out late, skipped homework, and spent weekends blowing through my parents' money, I was the one working part-time jobs just to save for college. When she failed a class, Mom and Dad paid for tutors and blamed the teacher. When I aced a class, they barely looked up from their phones. It wasn't just favoritism. It was like I only existed when they needed something from me. Even as adults, nothing really changed. My sister bounced from job to job, always quitting when it got too stressful. Meanwhile, I stuck to my grind, building my career piece by piece, paying my own bills, and carving out some independence. But no matter how much I tried to distance myself, my parents treated me like a safety net, always there to clean up the messes my sister left behind. I remember one dinner not too long ago. My mom put her hand on mine and said in that fake sweet voice, "You know you'll always be there for your sister, right? Family sticks together." My dad nodded like it was already decided, like my whole life was meant to revolve around whatever disaster my sister created next. And the worst part? They weren't asking me. They were telling me. They already assumed I'd step up because, in their eyes, I never had a choice. But they were about to learn just how wrong they were. It started on a random Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from a long day at work, still in my dress shirt, tie half undone, when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my sister stood there, arms crossed, and her 2 kids clinging to her legs. Without even asking, she shoved a diaper bag into my arms and said, "I just need a break. You'll watch them tonight." I blinked, completely thrown. Wait, what? You can't just drop them off like this. I've got work tomorrow, early shift. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please. You don't have kids. You don't understand how exhausting this is. It's just one night. Before I could argue further, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Do it," she said, as soon as I answered. "Your sister needs time for herself." Family takes care of family. I remember standing there, 2 toddlers already wandering into my living room, staring at my sister's retreating back as she headed toward her car. My stomach dropped. I hadn't agreed to any of this. I tried calling after her. "I can't do this, Sim, not your babysitter." But she waved me off like I was overreacting. The kids were innocent. It wasn't their fault. But I couldn't believe the entitlement, like my time, my job. My life didn't matter compared to her break. That night, while the kids cried themselves to sleep in my guest room, I sat at the edge of my bed, furious. My parents didn't care that I had deadlines at work, that I wasn't equipped for this, that I never signed up for fatherhood by default to them. It was simple. She needed a break, so I had to sacrifice. That's how it had always been. But this time, something in me snapped. And I knew this wasn't the last time they'd try it. The very next weekend, my sister called me again. Her voice was sharp, frantic, like I was already guilty before the conversation even started. "I need you to take the kids tonight," she said flatly. "I've got plans." I took a deep breath and forced myself to say what I'd been holding back. "No, I can't. I'm not available, and I'm not your babysitter." There was a pause, then the hiss of her anger. "Wow. Seriously? You know how overwhelmed I am. You know how hard it is being a single mom, and you can't step up for one night?" I felt my jaw tighten. I work full-time. I'm not a parent, and this isn't my responsibility. I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't keep putting my life on hold." She didn't respond, at least, not directly. Instead, an hour later, my mom called. Her tone wasn't angry at first. It was disappointed, and somehow that hurt more. "I don't understand you," she sighed. "Your sister is drowning, and you're just going to sit there. What kind of son turns his back on family?" Dad chimed in the next day with his own lecture. "Selfish. That's what you're being. You've always been selfish." I couldn't believe it. My refusal to become a full-time stand-in parent for my sister's kids wasn't just a disagreement. It was a betrayal in their eyes. My sister played the victim perfectly, telling anyone who would listen that I'd abandoned her when she needed me most. Every word from them piled onto me like bricks accusations. Guilt trips, insults, dressed as concern. For the first time, I saw how deep their entitlement ran. This wasn't just about one night. This was about them expecting me to give up my whole life whenever they decided I should dot, and for the first time. I realized I wasn't going to let that happen. It didn't stop with phone calls and guilt trips. My parents decided to take matters into their own hands. One Friday evening, I came home from work and found my sister's kids sitting on my couch alone. A note sat on the coffee table in my mom's handwriting. She needed a break. "Don't be difficult." Dinner's in the fridge. My blood boiled. They hadn't even asked, they'd just dropped them off. I called my mom immediately, but she didn't answer. Instead, she texted, "Stop being dramatic." This is what family does. The next week, I got a call at work. It was the front desk receptionist whispering, "There are 2 kids here. They say they're waiting for you." My parents had literally shown up at my job, dumped the kids in the lobby, and left. I felt my face burn with humiliation as coworkers gave me side eyes, whispering like I was some deadbeat dad who couldn't handle his own children. Then came the extended family. Suddenly, uncles and aunts I barely spoke to were calling me. "How could you turn your back on your sister? She's a single mom. Shame on you." My sister must have been spinning the story, painting herself as the saint and me as the selfish brother. The sickest part? She bragged about it. On social media, I saw pictures of her out at bars, new clothes, vacations with friends, all while I was scrambling, rearranging work and sacrificing my time because her kids kept showing up at my door at night. I'd sit in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with anger. It wasn't the kids I cared about them. It was the manipulation, the lies. The fact that my parents and sisters saw me as nothing but a free safety net, and for the first time, I started asking myself a dangerous question. What would happen if I stopped being their backup plan entirely? The breaking point came during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I'd shown up out of obligation, hoping maybe things would be calmer. Instead, the air was already thick with tension. My sister sat at the table scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging me, while my parents exchanged loaded glances. Halfway through the meal, my mom set down her fork and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. Dad leaned forward, his voice stern but rehearsed like he'd practiced in the mirror. "Either you step up for your sister, or you're no longer part of this family." The words hit me like a slap. I blinked at them, waiting for the punchline, but none came. My mom nodded, adding softly, "Family means sacrifice. If you can't do that, then maybe you don't belong with us anymore." My chest tightened. "Are you serious right now? You're telling me I have to give up my life, my career, my sanity just to raise kids that aren't mine? You're asking me to be her crutch forever while she gets to keep living like a teenager. And you think that's fair?" My sister finally looked up, smirking. "Well, someone has to help. You don't have a wife or kids, so what else are you doing with your life?" That cut deep, but I didn't let it show. I swallowed hard and pushed my chair back. "If that's how you see me, just a free babysitter, then fine. I won't do it. I won't sacrifice my life for hers. If that means I'm not part of this family anymore, then so be it. The silence after was deafening. My mom's eyes filled with tears. My dad shook his head in disgust. And my sister smirked in victory. And in that single moment, I was officially disowned. Walking out of that dinner felt like someone had slammed a door on my chest, but also like I could finally breathe for the first time in years. My phone wasn't buzzing with constant demands to help your sister or pick up the kids. The silence was sharp, almost unsettling, but it was freedom. I poured myself into work, staying late at the office because I wanted to, not because I was hiding from chaos. I picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned years ago: guitar, running, even sketching. My weekends belonged to me again. I reconnected with friends who had stopped inviting me out because I was always busy with family stuff. For the first time, I felt like a real person, not just a servant to someone else's choices. But the peace never lasted long. My phone would light up with angry texts from Mom. "How can you sleep at night? Your sister is drowning, and you're just sitting there." Dad's voicemails dripped with venom. "You'll regret this when you're alone and have no family left." Letters even started arriving at my apartment, pages of guilt-tripping, filled with lines like, "One day your nephews will know who abandoned them." Every word tried to drag me back under, but something inside me had shifted. The more they pushed, the clearer it became. This wasn't love. This was control. That night, lying in bed with no kids screaming in the next room, no last-minute knocks on my door, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. This was what life could feel like without their chains, and the longer I tasted it, the less willing I was to ever go back. The real twist came a few weeks later, when the phone calls changed from angry to desperate. My dad's voice, usually booming with authority, now cracked with strain. "Son, we need to talk about the bills." That's when it hit me. Cutting ties hadn't just cost them free childcare. It had cut off their wallet, too. For years, I'd been quietly covering gaps, slipping Mom's grocery money when she claimed she forgot her purse, paying the electric bill when Dad said he was short this month, even bailing my sister out of late rent more times than I could count. I never bragged about it, never even thought of it as charity. I just didn't want to see them struggle. But now, nothing. No more quiet transfers. No more checks tucked into envelopes. And without me, the cracks started showing fast. I heard through relatives that my sister's girls' nights dried up. No more flashy Instagram stories at bars or beach weekends with friends. Instead, she was ranting about overdue notices piling up on her counter. The same woman who mocked me for having no life was suddenly stuck at home, scrambling to figure out how to afford babysitters she once dumped on me for free. My parents weren't any better. The fridge was emptier. The house repairs they always put off now stayed broken. The mask of superiority, the one where they pretended everything was fine while leaning on me to keep it afloat, was slipping. They'd spent years treating me like the disposable son, the backup plan. And yet behind all that smug favoritism, they had been leaning on me financially like I was their safety net. Without me, their whole little empire was starting to collapse. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt vindicated. If I thought the silence meant they were finally giving up, I was wrong. My parents and sisters shifted gears from guilt to all-out war. Suddenly, I was the villain in every family conversation. An aunt I'd been close to stopped answering my calls. A cousin unfriended me online. At a family gathering I didn't attend, someone snapped a picture of my empty chair and captioned it, "Too selfish to show up for family." The rumors spread like wildfire. I was ungrateful, cold, heartless. My sister painted herself as the struggling single mom abandoned by her cruel brother. My parents told anyone who would listen that I chose money over blood. It didn't matter that the truth was the opposite. I'd given and given until I had nothing left, even outside the family. The whispers followed me. A friend of my mom's worked in the same industry, and suddenly I noticed coworkers pulling back, conversations dying when I entered the break room. I even overheard one colleague mutter, "That's the guy who abandoned his family." My stomach twisted. I'd fought so hard to stand my ground. Now I felt completely alone. Nights stretched into endless spirals of self-doubt. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I asked myself the questions that ate at me. Was I wrong? Was I really the selfish one? Should I have just given in, even if it meant losing myself? The isolation was suffocating. My parents had chosen my sister. My relatives had turned their backs. My reputation was stained for the first time. I wondered if cutting them off hadn't just cost me my family, had cost me everything, and in that moment, at rock bottom, I wasn't sure I'd ever crawl back up. It took time. But slowly, the narrative started to shift. The same relatives who once gave me the cold shoulder began to ask questions quietly, cautiously, like they weren't supposed to. One cousin called late at night and whispered, "Hey, was it true that you were paying your sister's rent all this time?" When I confirmed it, there was a long silence before she muttered, "They didn't mention that part." Word spread. The cracks in my parents' carefully curated story began to show. Relatives who once scolded me now turned their judgment on my sister. At family events, people started asking her, not me, why the bills weren't paid, why the kids were always with neighbors, why she always had money for new clothes, but not for groceries. The golden child glow was dimming, and my sister, she didn't take it well. I heard through the grapevine that she screamed at my parents, accusing them of not fixing it, as if they could just force me back into line. She raged about how unfair it was, how everyone was turning against her, how I was making her life harder by not doing what I was supposed to. My parents, once so smug and untouchable, were shrinking under the weight of their own lies. The proud tone in their calls was gone, replaced with something I'd never heard before, pleading. My mom's voice cracked in one voicemail. "Please, just come home. We can work this out. The family needs you." It was strange hearing desperation from people who had once looked at me like I was disposable. For years, they held all the power. Now, without me propping up their world, that power was crumbling piece by piece. And for the first time, I realized maybe I wasn't the one who'd lost everything after all. It was a Saturday morning when the pounding on my door started. Not a polite, knock-angry, relentless thuds that made my stomach sink before I even looked through the peephole. My parents stood there, both of them red-faced and breathing heavy. Like they'd rehearsed this ambush on the drive over. I opened the door just enough to block them from barging in. My dad wasted no time. "Why are you doing this to us? Why are you punishing the family?" His voice cracked between fury and desperation. My mom's eyes filled with tears as she clutched her chest. "We raised you better than this. We taught you family means everything, and now you're just throwing us away." Something in me snapped. For years, I'd swallowed every unfair word, every manipulative demand, every insult. But not this time. "You want to talk about family?" My voice shook, but it was steady enough. Family doesn't guilt-trip one kid into raising children that aren't his. Family doesn't use one son as a wallet while spoiling the other rotten. Family doesn't disown someone just because he finally said no. Their eyes widened, but I wasn't finished. I laid it all out: the rent payments I'd covered, the bills I'd quietly handled, the nights I lost sleep because they dumped kids on me without asking. I told them how every achievement of mine had been ignored while my sister was worshipped for the bare minimum. How they made me feel invisible, except when they needed something my dad tried to interrupt. but I cut him off with a sharp laugh. No, you don't get to twist this anymore. You don't get to stand here and act like I'm the one who abandoned you. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stepped back, looked them both in the eyes, and said quietly, "You disowned me." Remember, after that confrontation, I knew there was nothing left to salvage. The very next day, I walked into my phone carrier and changed my number. Every text, every voicemail, every guilt-soaked letter, they'd never reach me again. I blocked my parents on social media, blocked my sister, blocked anyone who tried to play messenger. For the first time in my life, the silence wasn't threatening. It was peaceful, days turned into weeks, and for once, my world felt like mine. I woke up without dreading a phone call. I came home to an empty, quiet apartment that was actually mine, not some halfway daycare or battleground for family drama. I felt lighter, freer, like I'd taken back something I didn't even realize had been stolen. Then, little updates trickled in through cousins and mutual friends. My sister's life was unraveling fast. Bills stacked higher than she could manage. Nights out turned into desperate Facebook posts begging for babysitters. The kids, who I worried for most, were being shuffled between neighbors and relatives because she couldn't cope without her built-in crutch, me and my parents. The once smug, untouchable duo were seen crying at family gatherings, voices low and broken. They weren't mourning me, they were mourning the loss of control, the end of a free supply of money and labor. Their golden child had fallen, and without me propping her up, the whole house of cards came down with her. I didn't lift a finger to make it happen. I didn't need to. My absence alone was enough. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. There were no screaming matches, no grand gestures. Just silence. Just me finally choosing myself. And as I heard about them crying, begging, breaking, all I felt was a bittersweet victory. It's strange how quiet can feel like freedom. At first, I thought cutting them off would leave a hole in me. But instead, it was like removing a weight I'd carried my entire life. For the first time, I wake up without dread gnawing at my chest. My mornings are mine. My nights are mine. My life finally belongs to me. I've poured that space into things that matter. My health is better, I'm sleeping, eating right, even running again. My career has taken off now that I'm not juggling emotional chaos on the side. And most importantly, I've built a circle of friends who respect me for who I am, not what I can give them. They're the kind of people who show up, not just take. The kind of family I chose, not the one I was forced into serving. Sometimes I catch myself remembering the old cycle, the guilt, the manipulation, the way they looked at me like a tool instead of a son. And then I remind myself, I broke free. One chose myself over obligation. I refuse to be the scapegoat one more time. I won't lie, it still hurts knowing my own parents picked my sister over me, that they disowned me without hesitation. But that pain no longer controls me. If anything, it fuels me. It reminds me of the line I drew and why I'll never cross it again. Because the truth is simple. Sometimes, the only way to win against toxic family is to walk away and never look back. And that's exactly what I did.